Hello and welcome to the Cardiac Cats YouTube channel. I'm your host, Jacob Shorba, and we had some breaking news come out this morning as the Jacksonville Jaguars have hired Tony Boselli as the Executive Vice President of Football Operations. So this is really big news. It's also news that's been anticipated for a while. There's been a lot of talk about this even before the season ended. There were rumors about it, right? A lot of it coming from like Pete Prisco or a communication log he had with someone, I think on Twitter or Instagram, that I think he ended up saying wasn't even real. But just a lot of things that were kind of pointing towards this, and probably was honestly a fan just like photoshopping a picture, most likely, is what happened. But ultimately, we kind of knew this was coming. It seemed like things were going to head this direction eventually. And it was just a question of what kind of role this Tony Boselli had. And kind of the last thing we had heard was that it was going to officially be EVP, but it wasn't going to be exactly what EVP has been before. It's going to be a little bit different of a role, so that's worth noting here. Now, before I get into that as much, I do want to look at this Ian Rappaport tweet. Kind of goes into more details here, saying that he is going to report to Khan, Liam Cohen is going to report to Khan, and the new GM that those two will search for, along with Shad Khan, will eventually report to Khan. So this is something where it is not like Tony Boselli is necessarily like the top dog in the organization. It is obviously a more prominent role, but he is not sitting here with the same power that, say, Tom Coughlin had when he came in Jacksonville. Now, you look back at 2017, I found this article. The first sentence in it makes it pretty clear. He gave Coughlin complete control and final say over all football matters. Right? And that is very, very different from what the power is that Boselli is going to have. Going into more details about it, Mia O'Brien reported, or at least shared this statement from the Jaguars, that Boselli is going to be responsible for player engagement, football technology, football travel and logistics, equipment, sports performance, team security, and football communications. And then he'll also serve as a liaison between football operations and the business side of the Jaguars to ensure a unified and successful organization as a whole. And you have a statement you can read down here from Tony. They posted a video as well. Definitely go check it out. But ultimately, this is a very different position. That's a big thing I want to stress here. Right? Some of this stuff, like, it is almost more business related than perhaps like something that requires like football game knowledge. Right? I mean, we're talking about travel and logistics being a part of this, technology, those sorts of things. It sounds like, I would take player engagement as probably being meeting with players and having communication with them. But it's a big mix of things. And to me, it almost feels like part of this role is taking on some of the work that Shad Khan has been responsible for. And I might be wrong on that. That's just the vibe that I get. So it's really interesting. And I think the first thing that's worth noting that is really good about this, your leadership structure so far, right? You don't have the GM yet, but it'll eventually be the GM, EVP Tony Boselli, and head coach Liam Cohen. So far, are very aligned. These are people who are definitely going to be working together. I don't see a world where we're going to have anything even close to what's happened with last GM and basically every head coach he ever brought in. Right? It's just not going to be the case. So that is a huge win for the Jaguars. Now, as far as how well qualified Tony Boselli is, I think Boselli understands what he knows. I think he knows what he should be involved in and maybe what he should enable others to do. I think he has a good understanding of that. And I don't think this is something where he's making roster decisions. To make that very clear, there's nothing in this that points to that at all. But to have someone who genuinely loves the Jaguars, that has general good football knowledge, because I'm going to be real, I'm discounting all the things that have been said over the last month, because what he had to essentially say, the stuff about Trent Baalke, defending him, like, the guy's interviewing for a job. He's not going to rip the owner apart. Like, let's be real here. I mean, if you were trying to interview for that job too, you wouldn't be able to say that stuff because you wouldn't be a candidate. So I don't really care at this point about any of that, because I know what I've watched from Tony Boselli over the last few years, and I think this is someone who ultimately is going to be qualified for this position, even if there are some hiccups early, right? Because it's a very different job from what he's done. But ultimately, he's just in a very big advisor role, is kind of how this feels. It's getting involved with the business side of things, and then trying to make sure to kind of keep an eye on how things are run, and that this team is able to keep staying successful once they get there, right? Because they have to be successful first. One other takeaway, aside from just generally being a fan of this, I think you're going to see a huge commitment from this team to the offensive line. I think that's as clear as day. You have Liam Cohen come out, say that the offensive line is the number one issue, number one priority for this team that they're looking at. So you start with that, and then you get an offensive lineman who's a Hall of Famer, the one Hall of Famer for your team, to be the EVP. It's like, it seems pretty clear that this is going to be incredibly important to the Jaguars going forward, is what is going on in the trenches. So personally, you know me, if you've watched this channel, I am beyond excited for that, because I have wanted for so long for this team to be physically dominant in the trenches. And you even heard some of that in the video that Tony Boselli recorded and put out on the Jaguars page after this. So I'm excited. I like the move. I think that it's good to get more people involved. I would be completely fine if they wanted to add more positions to this front office, because 4's better. It used to be 3, because you did have the assistant GM, and I'm assuming Ethan Waugh will stick around in that role or in a similar role. But I like it. More brains in the room. You just got to make sure that everyone is aligned, that everyone's in this together. You can't have the backstabbing bull crap going on behind the scenes. And if you have that, it's going to work out really well, because when you're able to get smart people together and they're able to challenge each other's opinions, it's going to build them up stronger. It's going to lead to better decisions, and it's going to lead to a better football team. So I'm excited. I love the move, and good for the Jacksonville Jaguars to start heading in the right direction. So with all that said, want to shout out our channel members really quick. We got Premier Nasir 904, Nightmare Eco, Gator John Bites, and Scrubber Ducky 500. Gonna have a lot of content this week. I know I want to get a mock draft out, probably 2.0, because we have the DC hired now. And then we'll probably talk about some other stuff. Might have some player videos kind of talking about off-season things, right? Because we're starting to get deeper into what is this team going to look like. Now we get an idea of what decisions might be made, right? So might be about Evan Ingram. That might be the guy we talk about. But we'll have some interesting stuff coming up. So make sure to stay tuned. If you got suggestions on things you want to see, I'm all ears, of course. So thank you guys for watching. Hope you have a great rest of your day. And finally, go Jags.